listening to The Agenda with Georgia Tolley
on Dubai Eye 103.8.
Hello there and welcome back. Now, I think probably one of the reasons why we've all got so excited about the rain over the last few days is because we really haven't had any decent storms for a couple of years. I think the last time I remember my children dancing in the rain, and they really do dance in the rain because they get so excited about it, like any UAE children do, might have been as October 2019. And then, of course, we've had 18 months worth of rain falling in the space of just 3 days. In particular, since December the 30th, Sai Al Salam in Dubai. So that includes, the area around Bab Al Shams Resort and the Mohammed bin Rashid Solar Park. And then, of course, Al Qadra Lakes, which I imagine are a little bit deeper now. They recorded 141.8 millimetres of rain. Compare that to the fact that on average the UAE only gets about 100 millimetres, channeling my L's, millimetres of precipitation. You get a sense of exactly why it's such a big story for us here on the radio station. So the big question, though, that we wanted to ask, because obviously we've been through all the community stuff, the fact that people have been struggling with leaks and there's been a few isolated sort of ponds of water on the community roads. But really we wanted to talk about whether or not this bout of rain is enough to bring an end to the drought that we've been seeing in the UAE. So to join us and talk us through that, as from a scientific perspective, is Rashyd Zaaboul. Now, he's a climate change modeller for the International Centre for Biosaline Agriculture, known as ICBA. It's based in Dubai, and they essentially look at the effects of water and salinity on the soil of the UAE. They're really the backbone for agriculture here in the UAE, and also do research for the whole world, really. They offer their research to other countries as well to help them learn how to grow crops in arid conditions. So it's fantastic to have Rashyd on the line. Thank you for joining us, sir. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Georgia, for having me on the show.
It's lovely to have you. It's been a while since I've been out to ICBA. I went out when I was making a documentary about agriculture in the UAE, and I went to the Soil Museum. You're doing very good work out there. It was really interesting to sort of walk around your fields and see the various sort of saline, happy crops that you're growing. And I even got to taste some, is it Salonica?
Salicornia.
Salicornia, that's it.
Salicornia, yeah. It's a halophyte crop that is tolerating saline water.
I have to admit, it wasn't my favourite, although I know that lots of people do love it with white fish. It's very popular in the east of England as well. You have it with white fish there. It's called something else there. I've got to try and remember. Samphire. They call it samphire there. Right. Anyway, enough of my reminiscing about the days when I got to leave the studio and go and explore. Tell us, we had a lot of rain recently. Like, we really have had a lot of rain. Like, it doesn't just seem that way. We've got the stats to support it. Is it?
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. Is it normal around this time of the year? Have I just got a very short-term memory?
Well, actually, it's not normal. With the climate change, nothing is normal those days. But we can say that it's a bit over the normal situation.
Yeah.
And because we didn't see that much rain during the last few years, it seems like it's too much. But if you look at the climatology of the country, we normally receive more rain in December and January. And in normal years, the rainy season that spans from November to end of March, with most rain received in January and February. So I would say that this is one of the normal years, with a little bit more rain coming in 1 month compared to the previous dry years observed recently. So just to understand the meteorological situation that is happening right now, it is a kind of a combination of low-pressure system that is taking place over UAE and Oman and making a junction with another very low-pressure system in northern part of Eastern Europe and Russia, which is bringing very fresh and cold air from the north at the upper levels of the atmosphere. And this fresh air and cold is meeting another warm and humid air that is dragged from the south over the Arabian Sea. And when those two kind of air, the humid and the warm one at the bottom level of the atmosphere meet the fresh and cold air in the upper atmosphere, the warm air is trying to rise up in the atmosphere, which creates convective situation and gives birth to convective clouds that are in their turn give heavy rain over limited regions and in short time.
So that's why it also feels a little bit blustery out there, I guess, because it is pretty windy at times. Now, I've been bandying this word drought around quite a lot over the programme this morning. I imagine, I've been using it anecdotally or colloquially. I imagine that there's a proper sort of scientific reason for, a scientific explanation for drought. Is the rain that we've been seeing recently enough to resolve the problems of the shortage of water that we've been having recently?
Well, actually, drought is a long-lasting phenomenon that can last from few months to several years. And there are three types of drought. There's the meteorological drought, when the shortages are observed for less than 3 months, and then after that it becomes agricultural drought, and here the impact starts to be felt on perennial crops and crops that are rain-fed, and also on the trees. And in this case, the supplementary irrigation is needed to maintain them in life. But when the drought lasts for more than 6 months to several years, we start talking about hydrological drought, where surface and groundwater resources are impacted. And this is impacting also other sectors that are using water. So the situation can even evolve in socio-economic drought, where some shortages can be observed in water and food supply chain. But what is happening now, we cannot say that the current rain will solve all the problems caused by the consecutive dry years in the past. But it is most welcome, and it will have a very positive impact on both agriculture and water resources, especially for the confined aquifers. So, as you know, the Gulf region is characterized by its hyper-arid climate, where less than 100 millimeter per year is received in most parts of the region. This is why agriculture is not relying on rain. So we have only irrigated crops, and most of the crop production is done under protected environment, and mostly during the winter season when it's cold.
So which category were we in before this rainstorm, out of those three categories of drought? Were we in number 2 or number 3?
Well, we were in number 3 because, as you have said in the beginning of your show, it has not been raining since 2019, I think, or even before. We had some very rare events, so we were in a hydrological drought, actually.
It's really interesting to hear. Right, Rashyd, we've just got to pop for a quick break, but I'm going to keep you on the line because I want to find out how big a problem this shortage has been for farmers and whether or not it is a problem that you expect to continue. Plus, I know that the International Centre for Biosaline Agriculture does a lot of research for countries like the UAE, what they can do as far as food production when it comes to facing long-term dry conditions. So we'll look forward to speaking to you about that in just a minute.
Keeping you updated and informed.
This is The Agenda with Georgia Tolley
On Dubai Eye 103.8.
Hello there, good afternoon. And we are discussing whether or not this bout of rain is enough to bring an end to the drought in the UAE. Joined by Rashyd Zaaboul, who is a climate change modeller for the International Centre of Biosaline Agriculture here in Dubai. Thank you so much for staying on the line, Rashyd. Really appreciate your time. Now, as we mentioned earlier, we have indeed been in a serious drought situation before this rainstorm because we hadn't seen a decent storm since October 2019. Now, what problems is this causing for farmers here in the UAE?
Well, actually, we cannot talk about. Are you talking about the drought or the rainy event?
Oh, the drought rather than the rain.
The drought.
I thought the rain would be a good thing.
Yeah. The rain is very welcome, and it will not cause any problem in the other. In fact, the drought since this is a very hyper-arid region and agriculture is not really relying on drought, on rain, it's only irrigated crops that are being practiced here in UAE. So all water is made available for farmers to water their crops. It's have been seen throughout the years that there was some kind of overuse of groundwater to irrigate the crops, but now after the law that was issued in 2016, things are now to a normal situation, and there has been also some improvements that have been done to improve, in fact, the irrigation systems and to improve the way the farmers are irrigating their crops.
That's really good news. I remember, for example, Her Excellency Mariam Al-Maheri has been working a lot with, I'm sure, alongside the International Centre for Biosaline Agriculture on policies to ensure that water isn't wasted and that food production is becoming more high-tech. But, I mean, the reality is that we are facing climate change and the Middle East is expected to bear the brunt of that. Is that right?
Yes, actually, the climate change is happening everywhere and is impacting all the globe. In this part, the only issue that will be observed in the future is the increase in temperature, which will put more pressure on water by the evapotranspiration that will increase and the shortage of the growing season will be shorter, in fact, in this region. But in terms of rain, it is expected that the annual precipitation will increase in the future in this region. This is quite interesting because in northern Africa, for example, it is expected that it will get drier. So there will be an increase in
That's
so there will be
counterintuitive. I never would have thought that you said that there would be more rain in this region because of climate change.
Well, yeah, because of climate change, if you look at the predictions or the scenarios that are put in by the IPCC, the International Panel on Climate Change, it stated in their report that in this region there will be an increase in the annual rainfall by something like 30 to 40%.
Wow.
What we are expecting also is that there will be an increase in the frequency and intensity of extreme events. So it is sometimes not really good to have more rain if it happens like as extreme events, but it will be beneficial for groundwater resources and for surface water resources.
We might
it's quite interesting.
We might just have to start building houses that don't have flat roofs, for example. If we're going to have, I know that's a really fundamental, slightly overly practical way of looking at it. I mean, as far as countries like the UAE, when facing dry conditions, although it sounds like we're not going to be facing long-term dry conditions, what type of rules and regulations can countries bring in? What can they do to protect themselves against the realities of climate change? Yeah.
So in a hyper-arid climate like in the Gulf region, countries have to put in place long-term strategies to secure water for vital sectors. So starting from drinking water to water for crop production for the purpose of food security, they need to put in place those regulations to manage water and to manage the share of water between different sectors. Unfortunately, agriculture is consuming too much fresh water compared to other sectors, and there is space for improvement of the water use efficiency and water productivity. The UAE has done a great job, in fact, by improving the crop production and the protected environment, by adopting advanced greenhouse technologies, and by improving the irrigation systems to save water. So the use of adapted crops that are consuming less water is also something that UAE is working on. And also UAE is working on finding alternatives to the crops that are consuming lots of water. So there has been a huge improvement in the groundwater consumption, as I have said in a few minutes ago, especially for irrigation. So the water table was dropping fast, and since 2017, just after the adoption of the law in 2016 concerning the regulation of groundwater in Abu Dhabi, we observed the stabilization of the level of groundwater. So I think the countries need to put in place regulations for water use in different sectors, including agriculture, and invest more in research to come up with adapted solutions to save water and produce enough food for the population.
Amazing. Rashyd Zaaboul, so clear and succinct. Thank you so much for your time. Rashyd Zaaboul, Climate Change Modeller for the International Centre for Biosaline Agriculture here in Dubai. Thank you so much. Fantastic to have you on the line.
Keeping you updated
On Dubai Eye 103.8.
You're listening to The Agenda with Georgia Tolley.